presentation from Chris on the VCT corridor flooring.
While Chris is getting his stuff ready, I don't know if everybody was following their email much late this afternoon, but you all should have received a memo from Chris with a description of the flooring and some photos attached, as well as a growing concern about some pinhole leaks and in piping at the high school. So if you didn't see that, you might want to maybe pull that up, have that at the ready as well.
Okay, well, the kind of touched on it a little bit here. So we've talked, I believe, 2 meetings ago about the flooring issues that we're experiencing at the high school. It's happening. We're having similar issues in a couple different areas, but the primary concern right now is the guidance hallway. As of the last meeting I spoke at, our plan was to reach out to a vendor, Allegheny Flooring, and they came and looked at it. They wanted to come back actually at a time when there would be relatively low traffic in the area and we could do a couple of test cuts. The test cuts were a bit surprising, that we were not expecting it to go that way. But what they did show is that the floor was adhered very well to the prep. The prep was adhered very well to the concrete, but in the areas where the bubbling is occurring, it's actually the concrete failing in the area, at least in the 2 test cuts, in the area of some very shallow rebar. That was a bit disappointing to find because it's obviously not a great situation. We have since patched that to, sort of put it back to a semi-usable state. But I think what's developing here is a very short-term need and a much more long-term sustaining need. The short-term being, I've reached out, Allegheny has provided a proposal to scrape up the floor that's there, chip up any of the spalling concrete, patch it, prep it, and either lay down the VCT that is there or carpet tile. The VCT is a slightly cheaper option. The carpet tile would provide a slightly longer, a bit more flexible floor surface. And I think that would, help to resolve the immediate need, which is the floor is unfortunately rapidly approaching that hallway is rapidly approaching an unusable situation. There's the old term, what makes an ocean wave, is sort of what's happening in that hallway from end to end. So in preparation for a return to school in September, I think we really need to implement a short-term fix while working then on a much more long-term sustaining fix that I think will likely be a very unattractive process based on what we're seeing. So I'm bringing that before you all tonight, sort of that situation. And I can roll into the piping, or we could touch on that however you'd like to proceed.
I have a question for, Meg is first. Meg, Mark, and then Chris. Go ahead, Meg.
So Chris, has Allegheny given you a price to do the what we're calling temporary fix?
Yes, they have. If we went the VCT route, it would be about $17,500, and if we substitute it as like an add-alt, the carpet tile, it would bring it to just about 20 grand even. And, you know, they're very concerned that we understand that this is not a sustaining repair. This is
So they're
just,
they're not gonna do any leveling or grinding it down or damp proofing and then put on
no,
like,
no,
no.
they're just trying, you know, my goal here is to try to get a floor that's safe and usable for September. I believe, you know, with Pete and Bob and I have spoken, I've spoken with them, and, you know, there's a lot of concern about having a structural review of it and seeing what's going on there and what might need to be done or not need to be done. Much more long-term and likely much more invasive. But in the short term, we need to get that floor specifically that floor, into a more usable state.
And is that new concrete with the addition
No.
or existing?
No,
That was
no, that's
existing.
existing.
Okay.
And we have, this is sort of the biggest area of concern. And then we have one trailing shortly behind it, which is in the sort of above the grade beam between the cafeteria and a building. The
Yeah,
ceramic
so-
tile, where we've had some splitting in the tile, kind of running left to right, right by the girls' bathroom in a building. So we would need to also proceed with that. That was not proposed as part of this. This was, right now, they're focusing on the guidance hall.
Peter, do you think ultimately we'd have to do something like what we did in town hall?
Yes,
Yeah.
like we talked about too, is doing some more investigation, and as
Yeah.
Chris and I talked about doing some coring in other areas to try and catch a piece of rebar and see if it's just unusual for maybe that pour or that rib that it's up that high. But you know, more investigating is going to happen. And Chris, did they say they were going to treat what exposed rebar there was with something when they got it open?
No. Actually, Adex also provided the floor leveling company also provided a letter saying that they were uncomfortable with proceeding at all without a structural review of the concrete and the rebar and all that. Again, this is, you know, sort of moving forward under the pretense that this is something being done temporarily, not as a permanent and final repair.
I think.
Mark?
So Chris or Pete, when you talked with the flooring subcontractor, did they tell you what they thought the ultimate final solution might need to be? Would it be like blasting the floor to knock loose everything, treating rebar, and then putting self-leveler down and then reapplying the floor?
We did talk about
don't-
shot. We did talk about shot blasting. The floor, they really wanted to try to stay away from that, from trying to make a recommendation. You know, that sort of their position was or it seemed to be, we do flooring, we don't do structural. So we would adhere to your base, but your base needs some work. It seemed to be the sort of reading between the lines.
So
I
Chris,
had
just didn't they say that they had never seen this before?
They did say that they had never seen it.
Is that not the first time we've heard that about the high school?
Yep.
If I may jump in, Meg and Pete, so what is it stopping to take the course? That goes pretty fast, right? It'll give a bigger picture, but, you know, the concrete course, Pete, you just mentioned a while ago.
Well, I think what we have to do is discuss engaging some testing company that would know then what they should be sampling and some sort of pattern, and then be able to test the you know, the concrete, whether it's still good in certain areas. I don't know, but I mean, I've had some discussion that we all think some specialized firm needs to drive the bus on this for us.
You know, this issue and the other issue, the plumbing issue, might be something like an SG&H or something like that might be able to provide some resources to parallel, you know, because it's probably different resources, the plumbing issue and the flooring issue.
We have Chris and then Todd already in queue.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, Chris read my mind there. I mean, SGH is expensive, but this is they have an arm that really, this is in their wheelhouse, the analytical stuff, and particularly if it's structural. I wondered, it seems to me for a long-term fix, we need to engage someone, you know, SGH or someone like an SGH. We can actually pull the original construction documents, which we have. We have the blueprints in the vault right outside Meg's office. I continue to be perplexed at how shallow the rebar was discovered, since concrete is weak in tension and strong in compression. Why is that rebar so high up? It seems peculiar to me. So the engineer's design intent back in 1970, I think will be a key part of this for any consultant to be looking at. And then another piece is just to figure out, okay, well, how was it actually built? Chris, I wondered, there's a photo you've shared that I've seen. I don't think it was in your memo. I'm driving right now, so I can't look at it. I apologize. But I think you've shared a photo that was actually taken from below in the crawl space that shows some spalling and exposed rebar, kind of where you would expect it acting in tension. Am I wrong? Did you not? Do you have a photo like that? And is that something you could share?
Yeah, I do. And that is actually.
I wondered if you could share it. It's interesting to me because we looked at. I'd say when we were looking at this problem, in my mind, I immediately went to what happened during the renovation, right? That you've shared that shows significant spalling and some length of exposed rebar in tension below. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that happening since the renovation. That almost looks like a longer term failure, and maybe it's just coincidence. You know, maybe this is sort of a ticking clock, and now we're just starting to see the evidence of that, Chris. Yeah, there you go. I mean, to me, that's a key piece, right? I mean, that's really, and that's where all the moisture is down there. So it's almost like we're starting to see the symptoms of this above, but this decay has been happening for a while down below, and we got to get somebody in to look at the whole picture.
So what you're looking at right now is directly underneath where we're seeing the cracking in the ceramic tile in the cafeteria, where it transitions to A building. It's been like this. That piece that's missing in this picture is actually laying on the ground to the left and below. It's been down there for some time, so it's not a new thing, new anyway. But it's that's sort of the other piece of it. But this is happening directly underneath where we've got the ceramic tile cracking, and then that's sort of from the other side.
The ceramic or the vinyl?
This is ceramic. This is the tile in the cafeteria, the gray tile in the cafeteria.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
The tile in the hallway underneath, or in the area underneath the guidance hall, the concrete is actually very clean. There is drainage underneath it. I'm going to come out of that for a minute, and there is drainage underneath it. But I can show you some photos about what's going on over there.
Thank you for clarifying that, Chris. I hadn't realized that. I think just in general, while you're pulling that up, I think just in general, whomever we might get to study it, I think it's going to gather some good information, both from above and below, and then of course the original construction documents. But go ahead.
So these photos are taken directly underneath the guidance hallway. This is looking from roughly the nurse's office towards the outside door. You can see the trench drain with the stone in it underneath. This is looking further that way. This is underneath the stage, the standing water. This is actually the least amount of water I've ever seen in there. These were taken about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. And then this is looking back from roughly the same center spot towards the cafeteria. So this drainage system exists almost directly underneath that hallway. But the concrete, so this is right on directly underneath. What you're looking at is directly underneath where one of the test cuts was done, and looking up into that rib. So
Wow.
It's
Oh,
incredibly clean. But this is directly underneath the test cut, or within a couple feet of it.
Total head scratcher.
All right, are you all set, Chris? Both Chris's? We have Todd.
Yeah, I mean, I am. Others may have questions. I just want to be sure when we are ready to wrap it up, we're sort of clear, what is Chris looking from us in terms of next steps for, summer work, and then what can we do to sort of make some progress towards getting somebody on board and maybe defining some scope. But I'm done at the moment.
All right, we have Todd, Geetha, and then Mark again. Todd?
Hey, so yeah, I think we need to get a structural engineer to look at this. This is really concerning. I don't think just a testing company. We need someone with experience of this type of analysis to look at this. This could be a very big problem, a very expensive problem.
Okay. That would be under Chris's next step also, all rolled into what the next step is. Geetha?
Yeah, I just want to echo the same thought, I guess, sort of jumping into the short-term solution before September. It would be a great idea to whoever, SGH or something equivalent to that capacity, to bring it in and look at it. And maybe they can put some thought, what is the short-term and long-term, and then get the fix going. That is my view on this as well.
Chris, how much time does Allegheny need to do their thing? Can they do it in like August?
I
Are they
have
gonna
not
be-
gone that far with them. I just had asked them for a preliminary proposal. I also need to get a proposal for them to do the work to the ceramic tiles that are cracking. But they know that I have an interest in getting it done over the summer, but this is as far as we've gotten right now, so.
And I'm sure, they're going to be doing summer slammers everywhere
Right.
too.
Yep.
I agree that bringing in SG&H is a great idea. I can tell you based on our, many, many years of working them on the high school, they're extremely busy and they're not going to be able to get in next week to look at it. Right. So it's going to take us some time to get them in. It's going to take them some time to put together a proposal. And then, for them to actually do the work. So I think it's a great idea. I just don't think it's something that's going to turn around quickly. So.
And that's why even coming into this, I was sort of heading at it like we've got to do a short-term, patch or Band-Aid to get us into a position to do a more long-term research and study and dig around.
Because if what Todd is saying, if it turns into a really, really big deal, then yeah, we're going to need time and a lot of time to come up with the funding and stuff. So,
Mark, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I was hoping, it sounds like everyone's in agreement that there's both a short-term need and a long-term solution. And I would suggest that part of I don't know if this is a motion or not, but it seems like Chris needs the floor working for students. ASAP, we got to get someone in to do the work. Ideally, while they're doing it, if they're doing it before we get an SGH or similar on board, they're documenting everything with photographs. So as they take up the floor and they find spalling patches, they're taking photographs, you know, keep documenting it all. But in the meantime, in parallel, ideally, Meg is preparing an RFP for the actual forensic analysis of the issues associated with the school. I mean, seeing that beam over the crawl space that's got all the concrete off the lower rebar just busted off is frankly a little bit scary. So regardless of whether it's been 10 years or a year, that's still scary.
And that's why I'm here.
Yep.
Bringing this to you.
Mark,
Can I just say, I agree with Mark 100%, but as I put on my capital hat for a moment, and I gave Roger McPeak a heads up. We were talking about this tonight, but it was short notice, so I don't know if he's probably not watching right now. But if a long-term fix, if let's say we get somebody like an SGH on board, they come up with 2 or 3 options. This looks to me like certainly significant 5 figures that could even touch 6. And that goes into the realm of capital project priorities. So, Frank and I will certainly be making the school committee aware of this. In terms of the long-term fix, this kind of thing could get discussed with the school committee and the capital planning committee. Pete, and Chris can come to the capital planning committee and discuss it and see what luck we have there advocating. But we cannot advocate for capital money for repairs like this until we actually get the analysis done and we have some options and we have a good handle on cost. So there's just a process we have to go through.
So do we have the area nailed down for the short-term fix, both Chris and, or do we need a structural review to start off anyway?
I don't think we need a structural review to do the short-term fix. I think we just need to be aware that that's probably the most likely next step, but we need to get the floors back into a usable shape. This has sort of been happening it started sort of slow, and over the last 6 months to a year particularly in that hallway, has just grown very rapidly.
Ryan, you had a question, comment?
Yeah, just so, it obviously seems like there's some sort of pervasive moisture issue throughout the concrete, et cetera. Do we have any concern or reason to suspect that there's a timely safety issue related to what could potentially be going on here? Because I think that has to be our first priority. It doesn't sound like it, but I think it's worth asking the question, because if there's any potential for some serious issue like that, that has to be priority number 1. Chris, Conway, do you have anything?
I absolutely think we should be moving on having a review of it. I don't know how long that would take to get moving, and that's why I'm trying to promote this as almost 2 parallel paths. The short-term one but also moving the long-term one along at the same time. The short-term hitting in the next 4 to 8, 12 weeks, and concurrently happening with whatever we're doing with whatever the committee wants to do with a long-term, more long-term, but immediate structural review of what's going on.
Well, why don't I contact Francesco tomorrow and see if he has any staff available to meet us out at the high school? With the ability to look, see if he's interested in taking it on, then see if he can come out and meet us and walk around with you and look at it and then put together a proposal.
Okay.
With the understanding that we're it's a little bit urgent, so we'll see.
And I would like to have a few minutes to touch on that plumbing issue too before we
Yes, please.
wrap that up.
Are there any more questions on the flooring? We got Chris get into the plumbing. Todd, your hand is still up. Do you have a question? Just not. All right, Chris, why don't you jump into the plumbing then?
Okay. So you've seen, I believe you can see my screen right now.
Yes.
So we've had this issue, again, you know, hindsight's 2020, but when we started a year or two ago with getting a random pinhole in the trap primer lines, and these are the lines that supply periodic water to the floor drains around the building, we were repairing them as we went. Like I said, a random pinhole here or there. And it wasn't, again, until the last 6 to 12 months where it seemed like they were coming in more and more frequently, and the scope was much greater. Instead of one, there were 5 in the section we were looking at. So what seems to be happening is, so these lines run for about 6 seconds every 24 hours to keep the traps in the floor drains wet, so we don't get sewer gases back up through them. And up until very recently, we were only getting it in the lines that go from the electronic trap primer to the actual traps. And then about a month ago, 4 weeks ago, we had our first leak on the actual supply line. Now the difference, or one of the differences, is that these trap primer lines are dry, or dry-ish, in other words, not under pressure, for the rest of the day other than those 6 seconds. The supply line is not, it's constantly under normal water pressure. So we did spring a leak very recently on the supply line to the electronic trap primer. So we're seeing this all around the building, all floors, all wings. We've seen it in the basement all the way up to the 3rd floor. It is largely it started out as sort of a nuisance, but is becoming a more significant concern because these things can happen behind walls, behind areas that we can't necessarily immediately see the effects of the leak. I've done some research on it and actually found a paper that somebody from SG&H had written. And one of the possible reasons for it is turbulence, and the turbulence causes the natural passivation of the piping, of the internal piping, to wash away, for lack of a better term. So it loses that protective skin that would normally develop. I don't know any further than that, but I know it's, we probably have about a dozen to 14 of these trap primers around the building. They do between 2 and 4 lines each. So you can see in the pictures, the green dots sort of illustrate the pinholes and where they're occurring. So like in this case, that you can see 5 or 6 of them right in front of you, and then on another piece of piping there could be one and then not one for another 10 or 15 feet. This piece here is one that's been cut out and is laying on a toolbox in my office. And this is another installed run. This happens to be on E1, just inside the main doors to the gym building. So I just wanted to get it out there and start talking about it, because it sort of like the flooring issue is an issue that doesn't seem to be going away and is in all likelihood increasing. So that's really all I have for that right now, but I did want to get it out there to the committee.
Mark, you had a question, comment?
Yeah, 2 questions. So Chris, the line that feeds the trap primer, it's full of water. It's just still water, except when it activates?
Correct.
Okay. And has there been any water testing done of the water in the building? Like, is it highly acidic, or is it highly basic, or is there something about it that could lead to still water in a dead leg like this, or a kind of almost dead leg, corroding the inside of the piping?
So that's it. Up until we got the first line, the first leak in or first pinhole in a live line, it's always been in what are effectively dry lines. You know, the trap primer the electronic trap primer has a vacuum breaker on it. And when it's done doing its 6 seconds of water, you hear the water suck out of the pipe and go into all the respective traps. And then they're sort of open air until they run 24 hours later. There has not been any testing, specific or general. I've done some TDS testing on it, but that's been about it.
And have you split the piece that you cut out? Have you split it and looked inside it?
I have not, but I can do, can do that pretty easily.
Yeah, so that's where you got to the thought that maybe it was turbulence, because it's dry and then it's periodically shot full of water.
Exactly.
And then it's dry again. And so, yep, that makes sense to me.
And then, that natural passivation that would occur just from it being exposed when that water comes spraying through there, it's not a nice laminar flow through the pipe. It's all over the place because it's an empty pipe, then it's a full pipe, then it's an empty pipe.
Yep.
And it, and that one white paper that I found that SG&H had done, that was the only, that sort of put me down there, kind of corroborated down that road a little bit, but that's just maybe just one potential answer to this issue. So what's happening right now is we're shutting off trap primers if we have a problem with them, because we just can't get to them. If we can't get to them. If we can, we're resolving it. But it's, I was in the basement, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, underneath the kitchen area. And I was surprised to see some there in areas that I had not seen any before.
Yeah, and it's scary to see 7 or 8 in one very short run of piping too.
Yeah. And it's very strange because it will go like 10 feet or 15 feet or none on a particular run. Like I said, there could be up to 4 on our trap primers, 4 different traps. And you could have 2 or 3 that you can't see any pinholes, and then one that's got 10 on it. It's.
What if there's any testing labs we could send it to for their opinion on it?
I think we'd have to give them some sort of guidance though, right? Other than, what are you testing for?
Is it a breakdown of the copper or, the turbulence, or is it a chemical reaction?
I feel like we could get a lab to test the water pretty easily. It's just, what are we asking them to test it for?
I meant the copper, especially on the copper pipe.
Yep.
See what's breaking down on the copper.
I mean, that's something I can look into metals testing lab. Maybe in the area, something that's easy to, if anybody has any recommendations, please let me know.
Ask around, that's all we can do.
Yeah, and cutting it open may confirm whether the corrosion is coming inside out, which presumably it is, but you'd see a lot more inside.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, I have a few pieces to pull from, so I can certainly cut open a piece just preliminarily and see what it looks like.
Would this fall along the line like a corrosion analysis, like, for pipes, Chris, like they have the thickness testing, and I cannot spell it, right? Something along the line, if you're sending the pipe to test it.
Brian, you had a question?
I'm just brainstorming, but so they feed the drains, they refill the traps. Is it possible something going down the drains from like a cleaning perspective goes backwards through these? Is that any possibility the way they work?
It would be tough. If there was a flood, I don't think they have a check valve on them anywhere. I've never seen one. So if let's say that floor drain consistently backed up, I could see that as being a problem, where and I would only expect it to be to where in the piping to where it gets to the floor level. You know, only that which is below the grade of the floor where it would then spill over. But we're seeing them in areas that are elevated, but it's something I can be more aware of, and just look at if that happens to pan out anywhere.
Yeah.
And I will look at it in that light.
Great.
I'd definitely test the water too, just to see if it contributes anything.
You do some research, Chris, on some testing companies and get back to us.
Yep, I will.
Thank you. Anything else on the high school?
That's it. It's a lot.
It is. Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
All right. Going to move on to Lynch Elementary and going to start out with Hill. And Andy, you taking this?
Sure.
Or Vivian? I don't know which one.
Andy can do it.
All
I'll
right.
just be an innocent bystander.
So Jay, are you sharing the screen or you want me to give me permission to share?
You have permission.
Okay. All right, so for the month of May, the accomplishment that was completed was the we're in the middle of advertising the pre-bid, the pre-qualification for the GC that is due this Wednesday. The qualification package will be due at Hill's office this Wednesday. 60% CD is out to the estimator. That should be due back on the 19th of June, for reconciliation. We're looking to send to the MSBA the 60% package on the 28th of June. Moving RFP that was completed last week, we got 3 proposals, one from ABC and Wakefield and another company. I think they're the local contractor that the town has used. The Wakefield moving is the lowest bidder, and he'll recommend it, to move forward with Wakefield. I think their proposal came in. Let me pull that right up. Yeah. Let's see.
Andy, I have the numbers if that's helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't you read that?
Yeah, so Nell and Son was 83,000 and change. ABC was 78,000 and Wakefield was 51,420. So significantly less expensive.
Yeah. So we reviewed that with Meg and Andrew. We recommend to move forward with Wakefield. He'll have worked with them in the past on many projects, and also they did a good job with us at Swampscott project last summer. So we will need a vote for that down in a little bit. Let me see, how do I go back here? So the next MSBA deliverable, as I mentioned, is on June 28th for the 60% CD, and then after that, in August 23rd is the 90% CD, and then we go out to bid in October. another commitment is that, you know, Meg will reach out to Hill asking us if we can be helping with the Parkhurst, managing the Parkhurst renovation, get more involved in that. So we're happy to. Vivian, do you want to talk a little bit about that? You know, we have a proposal coming in for Amendment 5. We just pull that up.
Sure, in response to the request, we did do a very quick analysis, having discussions with Meg White on what the requirement was and what the need would be, put together a draft proposal for, I believe, $58,110. And based on tonight's discussions, questions, if it is approved to move forward for the scope of services, we would be allocating more of Andy's time as well as a little bit of Mark's time dedicated to overseeing the Parkhurst, as well as increasing our site manager that is already on site daily for about an hour, a little over an hour at times, overseeing the modulars and the Triumph modular sections. He would also be adding time to his scope of services of an additional close to 4 hours a day in order to be present on site to monitor both the Parkhurst renovations, the interior renovations, as well as the modular setup and how the connectivity of those. Based on approval, I will convert it into an amendment and submit for final execution to the town.
Okay. I didn't look at your letter yet, Meg. Is that on the letter?
It is, yeah.
Okay, so we can address that with the letter.
Yep.
Todd, I see you have your hand raised.
I think that's still up.
I think it's been raised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had another question.
Vivian, can you?
Colleen has her hand. Sorry, Jay,
No,
I didn't.
I don't see any other hands up.
Is Colleen? Oh, no.
Mm.
Okay.
Can you go over the budget on the budget sheet that you sent out quickly? I was looking for how we're tracking the changes on Parkhurst. Andy, do you want, or Vivian, can you bring that up?
Andy, can
Yeah.
you can you share your screen, please?
I will.
Yeah.
We are tracking it separately, if that was partially the question.
Yeah, not
Jay.
this, your snapshot, I think, has a better view of it. Your
Sure.
second page.
The project dashboard.
Yeah, the dashboard, okay.
We are tracking it separately, if that was.
Is that the 160,000 under services instead of?
That's the, if you look here under the $5.5 million, we have committed 5.298. So right now under Triumph, let me see if I can move it. To change order 2, we have approved $45,026. So we've been.
So where's the total of change orders? Like so under budget authorized changes on administration, you have 160,500 listed.
That's
I
the
don't see-
VHB amendment.
Yeah, that's the VH.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't see the total, like, so change order number 1, where would that be listed?
It's part of this commitment because right now we still have uncommitted costs between the Parkhurst and the modular. We still have $222,000 left. That's why we didn't use any contingency yet.
But the change order, I think what Jay's getting at is the budget is 552. The committed cost is 529.
About 529. So we still have 200 and.
Right, but we're not showing, so nowhere on this dashboard does it show the amount of change orders. You have to just do the math out to see. So we must have over 100,000 in change orders, Meg, right?
Yeah.
between all the ledge and the relocation?
Can you scroll up, Andy, up to your change orders? Oh, you, on the one I saw earlier, you had them all listed.
Because it was only one on the last months. So they're not
Yes.
like adding up, right?
Yeah, so, change order number 1 was approximately, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, approximately $16,000. Change order number 2, Jay, the total amount for all of those change order proposals is $45,000 because that included the 50 some odd $1,000
Credit.
Credit.
Yep.
But Andy, when I looked at the earlier one today, you had them all listed out there earlier.
Yeah, we had it listed on the PCO, but we instead of showing PCO, we show it on the change order. Mark, are you on the line?
I am here.
Do you have the budget on your end, or you want to share, or you want to give it?
I think it would just be useful in like, you don't need to show all the PCOs, but like show the change order amounts. So
Right.
show 1 and show 2 and then show the total approved, because the total approved is greater than 45,000.
Yeah.
So that's, you can change that for the next time.
Yeah, we can show that. Sorry.
Yeah, because it's missing change order number 1.
And then we have some change orders for Parkhurst too, that are not here yet, right?
Right, those have not been approved yet. We haven't even gotten anything yet.
Okay,
Which we need to. We actually should have talked about that today, but yeah, we'll have quite a bit coming through.
Yeah.
Which we can have for the next meeting. We'll be able to resolve them in time. We've had some schedule issues, trying to expedite and do some work off hours. So there's been some additional charges due to that.
right. Just trying to get a feel for where the total budget is on there right now.
I think, Jay, that we're still well within the 5.520.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, it's already showing the 5.520. We there's uncommitted costs of 222,000, a little
Yeah.
over, almost 223,000. That doesn't include our amendment.
No,
Since it
that'll
hasn't
come out of that.
by
Yeah.
this committee just yet.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just we lose,
The Parkhurst items we're expecting are not
we
in there.
just lose track of the change orders when they're hidden under uncommitted
Oh,
costs.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And we'll list them for the future meetings to come.
I
Okay.
just have a curiosity question about the graph. Why is the actual spending is just a little less than the planned, just estimated, just curious. You know, the green line is above and the red is below. Why? I mean, if it's blown up.
It's just, when we originally put together the estimated expenditures and the cash flow, Geeta, we usually just anticipate what the expenditures are going to be, and the red is the actual. So sometimes, we only bill for hours we have spent. Similarly, so does the architectural team and all of the other teams. So there will be some ebbs and flows, but for the most part, we're still trending the same.
Okay, are we on schedule then?
Yes.
Okay.
For that regard, yes. But as far as the spending for the actual and the, at the beginning, we just anticipated cash flow and we'll measure against it. And there will be some ebbs and flows.
Okay. I think we attached the milestones too, so we're good on that. Is that right, Andy? Or do you have more? No. we're good.
Yeah, we like one of the big thing is the proposal, the RFQ. the pre-qualification that is due this Wednesday, is gonna be a lot of work, so, that's one of the big milestone. So we will try to, vet that out, get references and, work to get the pre-qualified contractor. We're targeting to get that done by, finish that as soon as possible. I'm thinking like July or August, to get that out of the way, but we're not bidding until like, October 6th. That's where we go out to bid. But we're on track.
Okay, any questions for Hill? I don't see any. All right, moving on to swing space. Meg, you able to update?
Sure, so the modulars are being delivered. They're coming in. There was a little snafu with the route, the original route, but that's been resolved. And 2 are on site right now. Another 2, I can't remember if they're staging them at St. Eulalia. So they're going to come in and they're going to stage there, and then they're going to be transported up to the site. And so right now there's 2. I think 4 more will happen this week. And then as they come in, they'll be transported up there. So they're right on schedule. And so that's going well. They're going to switch over their work area, put the fencing down below, and they're going to get working on the utility work. One of the agenda items is Eversource. So we've completed the paperwork, the license agreement with Eversource, and they are scheduled for a June 26th select board meeting where they'll get their grant allocation. And I'm finally communicating on a regular basis with Eversource. So they, I think as soon as that grant allocation is issued, which it will be on the 26th, they can get out there and start doing their work. So that's good news. The interior work is moving along. The abatement work, we changed their schedule, so they were doing their work off hours. Not surprisingly, it was, a little distressing for the parents and the teachers, for the preschoolers, to having the abatement work going on during work hours. So that's been, actually that work is all complete now. We do have some issues on the back side of the building where we're doing asphalt repairs. So we're having TAPE look at kind of coming up with some issues related to drainage without having to redo the entire area, because that would be just a lot of money to have to do that. But otherwise, working with Homer has been really great. They're working right on schedule, and they're working really well with us. They're accommodating our needs all the time. So that's been going really well. So I have no doubt that they'll finish their work on schedule as well.
Okay.
I think that's
Questions
it.
for Meg? No? Can you jump into the well field, Meg, next? Just an update, I guess.
Yeah, so we submitted the EENF on 5/31 as proposed. So that was a huge effort on everybody's part. So that was really great. It was a rather hefty document, but that will be published in the Environmental Monitor on the 7th, which is on Wednesday. And then comments are due back. So that's available to the public. Comments are due back on July 7th. And then if we are granted, we will know by July 26th. So far so good. And we do need to do some coordinating with TAPE on the specifications for the close, how to close the wells, but that's something that VHB and TAPE can coordinate on. But otherwise, that's going pretty well.
Okay. Any questions for Meg again? No. All right. Moving on to Lynch, finally. Charlie?
Let's see here.
So there was the department heads meeting notes and everything was sent out from Charlie. I did not distribute it yet. Will go out shortly. Either Chris is going to send it or I will. The 35 pages, but that did not get out this afternoon, Charlie. But you can discuss it anyways.
Okay. So I need to share a screen here. Where am I? Sorry. Okay, can we see that?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So you mentioned meetings. This is the slide we've been showing for the last few meetings, just about where we're at. So the completed ones, I think we've already talked about. We did sort of have a fire department review, although it really ultimately was more email and phones. Upcoming, we have security with the district and public safety. That's next week, next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow. As mentioned at the last meeting, we have the notice of intent has gone to the Concom, and we're anticipating a hearing on the 13th, I guess, unless we hear otherwise. And soon we're going to need to do a request for zoning relief through the ZBA, or that's certainly what we did on the VO. So we're anticipating some kind of site plan review. So the landscape architect is preparing to do that as well. Beyond that, we are just plugging along, as Andy mentioned, on the 60% set. Went to the estimators, as Andy said, they have it. We're expecting to submit, Andy said the 28th, we've been saying the 29th, which I believe is the date that we'd always said, but anyway, it's only a day difference. And then energy model and solar update, not too much news there. A revised energy model was submitted that includes the district's request for breakdown of hours of use for school purposes. And Andrew and Frank have that and can review that and make sure that it's satisfactory. And if so, we can take the draft off of the energy model. Zapotec's executive summary was issued. I think that was issued maybe even by the last meeting. They also have responded into various queries via email. So that's all been provided. So I think that's where we're at. I wanted to do an exterior design update, and the hope is to do an interior design update at our next meeting, we hope. But this will give you a sense, and there were, enough questions based on your review comments, the EFPBC's review comments about the exterior, that it seemed well worth at least going back through the outside of the building and just showing it to you. Then I think this may come up later. The intent is probably in July to really talk some about materials. And obviously at this stage, we're not talking specific colors necessarily or final decisions, but we are talking in general terms about the kind of materials that are being proposed for the building, both on the exterior and the interior. So these are views from the air. That shows you the building, from the south side. Again, this is sort of the helicopter views. There's 4 of these, so they're going to look somewhat the same. But it gives you a sense of how the building lays out. No dramatic changes, just refinements. It does reflect the change in the PK car pickup and drop off loop and parking configuration. Shows the additional green space over there within the riverfront, so that's encouraging. But otherwise, the building is similar to how we have shown it previously. There we are from the Brookside, looking sort of from the southeast at the pre-K wing. Here we are on the rear, looking at the back of the building. And here we are to the west, looking at the gym and the cafeteria. And you can see the field, the pre-existing fields to the left. So that's sort of the view from the air. And granted, unless you're in a helicopter or a plane or are a drone, this is not a view you're going to see very often. So it isn't really, you know, what humans are going to see very often, but it does give you a sense of how the building sits on the site and how the massing works. Entry view, no dramatic changes. It's just been a little bit more refined. I mean, there's been a lot of work that's gone into it, but it isn't necessarily things that you particularly notice unless you went back and did a side-by-side comparison of where we were to where we are. But there have been general refinements all through the building in terms of how the skin works and how it's organized. This is that view across the edge of the soccer field towards the front of the building, with the entry to the left and the pre-K wing to the far right, and the library right sort of in front of you. You can see the playgrounds, which have been more fully developed. There is a raised area in the playground, so kids can sort of run up it and run down it. And that's obviously a play surfacing. A lot more detail exists relative to the type of play equipment that's being specified and how it's being laid out. This is the entrance to pre-K. And the pre-K classroom wing to the right, along with the open classroom on the third floor with the PVs above it. So this is kind of the pre-K wing, and you see the pre-K playground to your right, and the door into there. This is from the east side. There had been the comment about, from various people had asked about creating a little more texture to the walls. This is kind of corbelling. It's not dissimilar to what we did at the VO, and it's really kind of there as a pattern. We also did change kind of how this end of this building was organized to break the scale down further. So it now has, I think, a better kind of scale generally, more consistent with the rest of the building in terms of sort of developing kind of smaller scale elements and not having anything too big and too tall, or too sort of overwhelming in terms of massing. And again, you see that PV roof up there. This is coming around to the back side, the north side. You're seeing the classroom wing, and you're seeing some seats and I think some signage in the foreground there. In the gym in the background. Again, we are proposing corbelling along the gym wall. There was a concern expressed about the sort of mass of the brick wall at the gym, and consistent sort of scale relative to like the front in terms of the classroom wing. So they're just treated the same way. This is the rear entrance into the lobby from the north side from the fields. Coming around the corner, you see the outdoor gym space that is under the big roof. The big roof is serving multiple purposes, as we know. It's in part carrying more potential solar panels, future solar panels, as well as giving the kids a protected place to play in inclement weather, which was something that had come up actually in programming at the very, very beginning of the job. So, you know, this is sort of an effort to do that and give a place to be out of the weather, but outdoors. So you could bring a group of kids outside if they were going stir crazy. And then coming around the corner, we see the front parking lots and we see the cafeteria to the left, some more corbelling on that wall. And you are seeing up here the roof rails. We have shown them in all the renderings, so they do appear. We will see them on the building for sure, if that alternate is taken. And then here you're seeing sort of the back of house spaces where loading is, as well as the CAF kind of little outdoor space, which has some tables and chairs, that overhanging roof, the proposed PV canopies to our left, and the front door down there to the right. And I think that's all of them. So I can happy to go back through any of them if anybody has any questions, or I can stop sharing.
Mark has a question.
Yeah, Charlie, thank you for the presentation. I think generally it's looking good, and I appreciate many of the adjustments that you all made, like to the texture on the walls and the adjustments to the cafeteria, that east wall, west wall of the cafeteria significantly improved. I have two comments for consideration. One is the coping. They still seem extremely deep, and
You mean the overhangs?
No, not the
You mean
canopies,
the
but
actual literal
coping.
copings? You mean here?
Yeah, they're pretty massive, and
Yeah,
if there's a way to make them more delicate, I think it would improve the appearance.
Right. The tricky thing is the amount of insulation we have. I think we have reduced them actually, but we can go back around. See, these don't look as heavy, right, as they did before, because we were aware of that comment, and we did try to reduce them some. But you still think this is heavy?
Yeah, I mean, ideally they're almost invisible, but
oh well, they're not going to be almost. They're not going to be sort of little 4-inch gravel stops. I don't think. I don't think we can detail it that way. We can look at it, but.
And the only other comment from just from this quick overview that is noticeable is, first, thank you for showing the roof railings. I think if we end up with roof railings as shown, it's going to look like someone's doing work on the building all the time. And if we're going to have permanent roof railings for safety, that's great. But I feel pretty strongly that they need to be part of the design. And I don't think
when you say part of the design, what do you mean?
I just don't think that, like, no penetration, yellow painted pipe roof rails are going to look like anything except a temporary condition.
So we might be able to get them. We might be able to get them in a different color, but I think given that they're an alternate, we can't really. They're going to have to be a ballasted system, and I think you want them to be a ballasted system anyway, because I think it would be overwhelming number of penetrations if you didn't, right? And I think the potential, you just don't want to penetrate a roof that many times you can possibly help us. So I think the ballasted system makes sense. The other option, of course, is to push them back farther away from the roof edge, and which we could certainly do, but then you're just losing PV, right? Yeah. So we could reduce the capacity of the PV system some and set them back further till they're really literally out of the sight line, unless you're, 10 feet tall. And we certainly study that. I mean, we tried where we could to push them back, so you wouldn't find them as noticeable. I'm not sure they have to be safety yellow. I think they could probably be black or something, or gray.
Yeah, I don't know how much it'll help, but I don't have a solution for you. I'm just noting that it does look like it's going to look like a temporary condition, like someone's doing work on the roof.
Color would help. And maybe we look at them and see if there's any way we can squeeze further back, because they will start to disappear if we do that.
And there was the facilities did not want like a horizontal lifeline or something similar.
They didn't want anything other than a roof rail.
Yeah.
Because that's what we often do, is just davits that you can connect to. But
yeah. All right. Thanks.
Chris Nixon.
Yeah, just on that subject, if you can get something other than safety yellow, I do think, I agree with Charlie. I think a change in color will go a long way. We have safety yellow roof protection at Winchester High School that maybe those of us who went to architecture school, we see it and we're hypersensitized to it. But I was actually just having a conversation with a couple of people over the weekend about it, and they had no idea it was there. I feel like it's glaring, but maybe 9 out of 10 don't see it. But if we have an option on color, I think it would be terrific.
When you buy a lot of them, they'll paint it to pretty much any color you want. We usually get them painted to the color of the roof trim or some accent up there.
Help.
All right, thank you, Peter. Geetha?
Yeah, I just have a question. How about the brick? Are we settled on the tone of the color of the brick, you know, the main body brick color, or when would that happen? I know Charlie is using the tone of the color. Just curious. I know we get, aren't we quite picky about that, or has it been chosen?
Well, the thought was, as I had mentioned earlier, that we would bring a sample of a proposed brick to, well, first we'd do a digital presentation of some proposed materials, and we would also drop off physical samples that members of the committee who wish to, it could probably go to town hall and see in person. Ultimately, we don't usually actually pick the final brick till during construction, but we do have to specify a manufacturer and a product. So we certainly are going to try to do that. So, you know, I think we're not trying to do a traditional red brick here. I think we're trying to do something that's either a little warmer or a little bit subtler than that. And this was sort of what we settled on initially, just for the purpose of the renderings. But yeah, I mean, there will be a chance to see them and comment on them for sure.
Okay. I just want to say for the railing, I guess the DPW want the railing no matter what. I guess the color is the one, the trim color would blend it in. That's all I wanted to say.
Any other questions on the exterior for Charlie? All right. So the moving on to the working groups, that's the memo. I got hooked up on it. Chris just sent out the working group memo, Charlie. I threw you off guard on the first question.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's out.
Yeah.
If everyone checks their emails, they should have just got it.
And it's a lot of, Jay, just real quick, I appreciate Charlie and his team working hard. Every single comment has been responded to, I think, pretty thoughtfully. I think it's a 35-page PDF. Everybody should have it in their email, and I've uploaded it to Project Drive as well. So take your time going through that. And I think, Charlie, you've indicated you don't really see anything in the comments that concern you as a sort of design or budget issue, but more like it's a good back and forth. So folks should just review those comments and be sure you're comfortable with the responses.
Yeah, I would just say if you have your favorite comments and you want to see whether we responded the way you wanted us to, you can certainly look at it and reply back. We can try to justify our response. We did do our best to try to integrate the comments we saw. There are certain ones where we didn't necessarily entirely agree. So, you know, have a look and you can let us know if you don't agree with something.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I did indicate in the email, folks should just, if you have follow-up, just be sure you're sending it through Jay so he can kind of keep tabs on everything.
How would anything expecting, or maybe for the Concom meeting, should be everything set? Is it this in 2 days or something, Charlie? Do you have a Concom meeting? No.
It's next week.
It should be,
Okay.
in theory, it's next week, and it could get continued multiple times. We don't know.
Okay.
Right, but the initial hearing is next Tuesday night.
Okay.
We should be in good shape.
Okay.
Nitch has gone back and forth several times.
Okay.
So I think hopefully
Yeah, I
we'll
think
be in
they've
good
done
shape.
everything they possibly could to respond to the Concom's sort of specific concerns and the specific methodology they wanted. They've revised their analysis and their numbers at least 3 times. And so, and we've been in communication with the Conservation Commission for over a year. So hopefully there won't be any dramatic surprises, but we'll see.
Yeah, and we had a preliminary meeting with the assistant town engineer to look over the NOI, because ultimately the Conservation Commission will pass that along to engineering to get their comments. So we had a good first meeting with engineering too. So I think we're in good shape.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Charlie on that? All right, energy model update, Charlie?
I kind of already talked about that. I think we had an updated energy model has been submitted. It's just waiting for a response from the district.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before we move on? No. I'm going to touch on solar a little bit. It's a real cluster what's going on between questions and answers and driving Zapotec and Charlie crazy. They're pumping back answers as quick as we ask. Select board is going to bring it up tonight. So if we're done, people can jump on and see what's going on. I guess if anyone has any questions about what's going on, we'll try to answer them, but we're looking for select board's decision tonight or directive of what they want to do.
And Jay, you mean in terms of direct ownership?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, basically, just to reiterate, if the school committee's role is to, if the school committee supports a power purchase agreement, it needs to say so. And if the select board feels strongly that we're better off direct purchasing, they can say so. And what Mark and Jay and I shared with the select board at the meeting on the 22nd was we need a decision in June to get started on the PPA procurement and defining scope. But on the other hand, if it is to go direct purchase and the select board and management need to identify where that money is, where it's coming from, we also need a decision in June because Charlie and his team in Zapotec have a huge amount of work to do in July because there's a deadline upon us. So I think everybody does understand what the timeline is, and there should be some decision soon.
I think we lost you, Chris.
Sorry, I don't know where I dropped off. I'm in the car, but I was just saying I think everybody understands what the timeline is, and we should be getting a decision soon about which way to go.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Nope. All right, payment and authorizations. Frank, can you share that?
Oh, wow, you're pushing me now, Jay.
Frank, you need to, it should be the management letter that Meg sent out just a little while ago.
Easier said than done, my friend. Talk amongst yourselves.
So there are four, sorry, hold on. There are four payment authorizations, and Frank will pull it up in a second, but the first is for Triumph in the amount of $390,865.16. Invoice from VHB for $74,450. An invoice from Hill, which didn't show up on the letter, but I since have received it for $40,467.50. And then Tape Architects for $411,236. So that's all the payment authorizations. And then the new spending authorizations, a couple we have touched on already, but the first one is for ODP workspace. That's for the, for lack of a better term, like kind of the portable cubbies that the school department wants to buy for the modulars, and that's for $35,457.80. And then two change orders from Triumph. The first is for temporary striping in the parking lot for $1,155.75. And then the other is for some exploratory excavation that had to be performed to determine some information about the water and sewer line. That was for $6,135.82. And then finally, Hill's proposal for construction admin services for $58,110. And that should be it.
Meg, could you repeat the hill, the one that we didn't have for me so I could write it down? The,
Oh, yes, $40,467.50.
thank you.
Yep.
Any comments, questions? Okay, can we get a motion?
Sure, move to approve the payment authorizations and spending authorizations as presented by Meg White, per the document dated June 5th.
Second.
And including the actual value for invoice number 24 from Hill International of
40,000, Yep.
$467.50.
yes. Second?
Yeah, I second.
Anyone?
Second.
Keitha?
Yes.
Okay, roll call. Frank?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
If we have, John's not here. Colleen, if you're,
Yep.
thank you, Colleen. Chris? Don
Yes. Yes.
and Emily?
Yes.
I don't see, I think we lost Chris.
No, I'm a yes. Sorry, I was
Okay.
having audio trouble.
Thank you. All right, next meeting, we're gonna meet on the 10th of, so the next meeting is the 21st of June. Because there's no the 19th meeting is a holiday. And then we're gonna move, instead of the 3rd or the 5th, we're gonna move to the 10th, if that works for everyone, of July. That will be a Zoom call again. And we're looking to do the 17th to get back on schedule in person and should be able to see the samples at Town Hall at that meeting from the Charlie would set up. If that works.
I was thinking, Jay, that maybe even that week before. In other words, if we meet by Zoom on the 10th, I think what Charlie was shooting for, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, is that you might have a Zoom presentation on those materials, explain them and their relationship to one another, that they could then be delivered to Town Hall. Folks can come by during the week to personally check them out if you want to. And then we'd be meeting in person on the 17th for you to kind of present those in person. Is that right?
Yes, that was the theory. I would present them digitally. People would go by and see them, and then you could have a discussion if you wanted to about it on the 17th. I'm not sure we would do a second presentation. I think it would be more if there was, if people had comments. We could chat about it, but
Okay.
I think the presentation will sort of be on the 10th.
And just to be clear too, Charlie, this isn't about getting into final shades of brick or anything. This is a little bit higher level still at this point.
Charlie's frozen.
Uh-oh.
The question, Chris, whether the color may be associated with the supply restriction or no, that should not be the case.
Well, if that's a question to me, I mean, it's a good question for Charlie. Maybe Charlie can speak to if anything is sort of supply chain impacted.
He dropped off, I think. He's no, there he is. Hey, Charlie.
Sorry, I disappeared. On the interiors, am I still muted?
You're good.
No.
Okay. On the interiors, again, we're going to, we'll have porcelain tile, we'll have, vinyl tile, we'll have materials. And again, they don't necessarily have to be the final, but we will do our best to make recommendations that kind of reflect what we're showing in the renderings and, are getting close, because that's what we have to do in order to have a specification that can be bid.
And Charlie, I was just asking you to confirm, right as you were freezing up on us, that the purpose of the discussion on the 10th through the 17th is not really to pick the final brick color.
but just get sense of palette, if you
Yep.
will.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you. And Geeta was just asking a question about anything that may be impacted by supply chain, difficulties. So I don't know if that's something you want to talk about now, but maybe something to be prepared to talk about on the 10th or 17th. And Geeta, was that sort of your question?
Correct. Like, would you also give a heads up, Charlie? Okay, maybe this color may be restricted to supply chain, or I don't know, just thought of it and asking him,
Yeah, I think we have a long enough construction duration that my intuition is we are going to be okay on most of the architectural materials. I think if we run into trouble again, it's going to be mechanical units, or it's going to be switchgear, or it's going to possibly be aluminum windows or aluminum curtain wall. But we haven't seen too many glitches anymore about sort of standard finishes or brick or masonry products.
Okay, Todd, and then
Finishes.
Mark has a question also.
Yeah, so Colleen and I both have EMC on the 10th.
Oh, okay.
So that's a makeup meeting, Todd, just because we were assuming people would not be available on July 3rd or July 5th because of July 4th.
Yeah, I'm won't be available that week either, but maybe Colleen and I could split that one to this meeting, one to the other, if we do it on the 10th.
Yeah, and in other words, the 17th is a regular meeting. It's just a meeting of the 10th. We're trying to figure out, what do we do, because of the July 4th holiday, we figured everybody would be scarce.
Todd, you and I we can chat and figure it out.
Yeah, we can split it up.
And by the way, Todd, so a part of that meeting on the 10th, a lot of that meeting on the 10th will be Charlie presenting materials. But then again, the intent is to have, as much as possible, have those physical materials arrive at town hall that week. So, WinCam records our meetings. Either one of you could watch that on WinCam, go get your hands on the materials. And then, but are you available on the 17th?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay.
Mark?
We talked about this before, but we've had the good fortune of having 2 other Type A buildings in town, both elementary schools. So when we're having the discussion about materials, particularly interior finishes, but maybe broadly applicable to all materials on the project, definitely worth getting feedback from facilities in particular about any things that have not worked out the way that we hope they had, or that have ongoing, maintenance concerns, and maybe there's a better product. So just something I want to keep on our radar as we move forward here.
That's a good point. Peter has already made some comments on products and stuff, but that's a very good point. Anything else? Okay.
I have a question. Does Meg or Pete or Chris need any kind of authorization or vote from us to proceed with the temporary fix in the proposal for forensic analysis at the high school?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be helpful. I just don't know, would we be funding this out of the project? Is that, Meg, where this would come in?
Certainly we could. I know I'm gonna start getting pushback from Stacy, our comptroller. About using project funds that have been out there for so long. So I would have to run it by them. The project budget has a remaining balance that could cover this. I would just have to see if it's gonna pass the comptroller.
Meg, when you have that conversation, I would, you maybe politely suggest you explain to Stacy, this is not something that like just happened, you know, that the failure has been there for a while. It's just that it's accelerating. And we're sort of realizing how serious it is. So if it's helpful to Chris Conway, I'd be happy to make a motion that we authorize the use of existing Winchester High School project funds not to exceed $25,000, because that gives Chris a little bit of margin.
That would be great.
For the removal and short-term repair of the hallway adjacent to the nurse's office and guidance, and flooring replacement, which may include VCT or carpet tile. That would be the end of my motion. I happen to think carpet is the way to go, but that would be the end of my motion. If somebody wants to second.
Second.
Is that you, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll do a roll call on that. Frank?
Aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Geetha?
Aye.
All right, Pauline?
Aye.
Don? I think we lost Don. Okay. And Emily.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, thank you. That was a good idea.
And does Meg need anything to proceed with soliciting proposals, or Meg, that's just something you can do for SGH or others similar?
Yeah, I mean, when I was just planning to go reach out to SG&H right now
Yep.
and not do an RFP or anything. So yeah, I can just make a phone call and get them out there and work, and you know, they can coordinate with Chris.
Great.
And then put together a proposal, and then we can review that. And I'll talk to Stacy and Mark tomorrow about the concept of continuing to use the project funds. So might not be an issue.
And Chris Conway, you could do me and Frank a big favor. If you could email us some of those other photos that you shared tonight that are not actually in your memo. And then, because that'll help us as we think about how we want to introduce this topic to the school committee, which is important for them to know, just given our concerns about what we're seeing, but also frankly to set the table for a capital conversation. And the timing, if we're fortunate enough to get SG&H engaged, Meg, I do not foresee getting I don't foresee us getting something back in time for like a summer capital vote, but it could certainly be summer capital discussion. And if it is a concern and priority of that committee, as I hope it would be, could be something that gets mentioned in a capital report and maybe framed for town meeting action, not in the fall, but in the spring. You know, in other words, we don't have to lose a whole year. Maybe we just lose 6 months. I mean, I'm way ahead of myself because we have to convince a committee and get a lot of information. But unless Meg, you're more optimistic than I am, I'm not sure. I mean, it's June, so I'm just not sure we're going to get.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing I want to add, Meg, is would you make them go under the crawl space, SGH, if you make them to come? Would you?
Well, I
That would be
wouldn't
great.
make them do anything, but
I mean, ask them.
I would recommend that they come prepared to go in there.
Okay.
But
It's a good time down there.
I have never been down there on purpose. I've never been down there. But yeah, I mean, I would let them know that you know, to send someone who would be comfortable.
Right, like anything
Like
that
that.
Chris Conway can maybe you know, continue to document or something in that space, if they can give some thoughts or something would be good to, you know. I guess
Yeah.
Chris is doing a good job of taking pictures. Maybe if SGS happen to come and they can say, hey, okay, look out this. So,
Yeah, no, if they come and do a full thing, they're gonna need to go down there.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Just one other,
Oh.
I'm sorry, Jay, Roger did just respond just with an email this evening, and he was looking at some, I just saw his email came in, Chris. That's copper piping at the high school. Do we know what the material is of the pipe hangers?
I believe they're coated.
So I think he was looking at a difference in maybe color and material, and was just curious if there might be galvanic action going on between the hangers and the piping. That would be something to look at. That would be.
Yeah, as I recall, they're coated hangers, and then they go into a cast trap. So there is some potential into the cast trap, I would think, but I can't think of anywhere I've seen that they're not coated hangers. So I wouldn't think they would be a problem. The only thing that comes to mind is where it joins the cast trap. And the trap primers are electronic, so there is, going through a magnetic coil,
Right.
electronic solenoid is what's running it. So
Yeah.
there could be something funky going on there too. But I mean, I had these in my past life and never had any problems with this, but exact same product actually. And so.
Okay. Well, I'll suggest that Roger, he can watch this section of our meeting tonight where you made your presentation, because I think, as chair of capital, he's interested in following all this as well, depending upon where this goes. That was it. Thank you, Jay.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Second.
All right. Frank moved, Lisa, Brian?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Etha?
Yes.
Colleen?
Yes.
And Chris, Mark?
All right.
And Don dropped off. Emily?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good
Good night.
night.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
You.
Good meeting.